in person. We played some clips of his interviews on the African History Network, and people have been asking me, when are you going to bring Brother Umar on? When are you going to bring Brother Umar on? I said, well, calm down. We're going to bring him on. We're going to bring him on. So I want to welcome to the African History Network show for the first time, but definitely not the last time, nationally certified school psychologist, lecturer, grassroots historian, and educator, Dr. Umar Abdullah Johnson. Hotep, Brother Umar. You there, brother?
Hotep. Peace and blessings, Brother Michael. Thank you for the invitation to come to your
No
radio
problem.
show. Very honored.
No problem, brother. No problem. We definitely appreciate you, man, all the work that you do, and we definitely appreciate the how you infuse history and African history dealing with school psychology as well. You know, that's like in the tradition of Dr. Wade Nobles and Dr. Amos Wilson. So we definitely appreciate that also, brother.
Indeed. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Well, tonight's topic is the psychoacademic war on black boys. And before we jump into that, for those who may not be familiar with you, and also I know some people may have heard you on the Tom Joyner Morning Show a couple months ago. That was fantastic also, brother. I got to tell you, man. Listen to Tom. I've been listening to Tom Joyner, man, for probably 12 or 13 years now. And I heard it, you know, when they said, when they were introducing you, and they said naturally certified school psychologist, I said, that can't be Brother Umar Johnson they're going to have on. They said your name. I said, oh, my God. Do they know who this brother is? But it was fantastic, man. You brought a lot of information to people about the harm of the psychotropic drugs, which we're going to talk about tonight, and how a lot of our African-American male children are being herded into special education, misdiagnosed, things of that nature, man. So really, really appreciate that, brother. But before we jump into it, for people who may not be familiar with you, because we have a lot of first-time listeners tonight, what have you, why don't you let people know briefly who you are, where you're from, and what it is that you do?
Certainly. My name is Dr. Umar Johnson, born and raised North Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Professionally, I am a nationally certified school psychologist with a doctorate degree in clinical psychology, as well as a master's degree in educational leadership and my principal certificate. I also have a degree in political science. As a school psychologist, my job is to evaluate, to test and assess children to determine whether or not they have one of the 13 federally defined educational disabilities, the most popular of which include the specific learning disability, which is by far the most popular diagnosis in the world of special education, mental retardation, which is extremely popular because black boys are disproportionately misdiagnosed with this label. Black boys are 4 times as likely as white boys to be diagnosed as retarded, but yet 4 times less likely to be found to be gifted. Then there is the emotional disturbance label, which is very popular because it's the label that a lot of black boys are given when they refuse to accept disrespectful treatment by the middle-class white women who teach them. And then there is autism, which is growing in prominence because we are giving our children these immunizations that are causing neurological damage in the brain and bringing on autism. And then the 5th most popular, and by the way, I refer to these 5 as the big black 5 because these are the weapons of special ed that are used. These are the bullets in the gun of special ed that are used to miseducate our children, and particularly our boys. And number 5 is the other health impairment, OHI. And the most popular diagnosis.
What was that last one, brother? Can you repeat that? That last one again?
Other health impairment, OHI. And that is a diagnosis that's given when a child has a medical problem that was diagnosed outside of school, but is adversely affecting how well they learn in school. And the most popular medical diagnosis is ADHD, which is a psychological diagnosis, but because psychology is a health profession, And because psychiatry is a branch of medicine, we find ADHD being diagnosed in record numbers. And as a result of that, children are classified as other health impaired and put in special ed. ADHD is not a special ed label. ADHD is not a special ed label. It's a mental disorder. But if you're diagnosed with that mental disorder, because it is a medical diagnosis, you can then be put in special ed as a result of it. And of course, you have the other diagnoses, which include deafness, blindness, traumatic brain injury, orthopedic impairment, multiple disability, blindness and deafness in the same child, developmental delay, which is a label we use on preschool children, and the speech and language impairment. And speech and language impairment differs from the others because if you're diagnosed with that, you don't go to a special ed class. You simply get therapy from the speech and language therapist. So that diagnosis is not as criminal as the others. But the big black five, the retardation, the learning disability, the emotional disturbance, the autism, and the other health impairment for ADHD, those are the 5 bullets from the gun of special education that is currently being used to miseducate black children.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this. I've seen I've seen a number of videos and interviews with you, things like that. And if we start and we look at special education, right quick, why was special education created in 1975? Let's give a little background information for this, because the reason why I say, I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
Special education was created as a compromise between the federal government and white school districts across this country, who up until 1975 were still refusing to fully integrate black children into white public school districts, or should I say into the public school districts, all of which were basically controlled by white people. And so the federal government needed a way, a strategy, some sort of an inroad to convince white schools to accept black children. In 1954, the Brown versus Board of Education decision basically said that you couldn't use race as a factor in school, but nobody listened. The white governors of the South still refused to integrate the schools. They didn't give a damn what the Supreme Court had to say. And so in 1963 and in 1964, you get the Civil Rights Bill. Once again, the federal government reiterated its demand that public schools be fully integrated between the races. Once again, white school districts did not listen. Even up here in the North, you had a lot of boycotts against busing. You had white parents. Many of them were white teachers who were boycotting buses and turning over buses and throwing bottles at buses that sought to desegregate the schools by busing black children. And so the school integration movement lasted all the way up until the 70s. In fact, I would argue it still isn't over, because there's still schools in America that have never been fully integrated, even since 1954. And so in 1975, the federal government said, we're going to meet these school districts halfway. We're going to let them resegregate. We're going to let them resegregate. But we're not going to say it's because the child is black. We need a better excuse, because that's illegal. We're going to say that they're learning disabled. We're going to still let you segregate by race, but we're going to let you do it under another name called special education. But that wasn't enough to convince the school districts to let the black children in, because as far as they were concerned, they already were not in, and they didn't need to try to resegregate through special ed, because they had already decided they wasn't coming in at all. And so as a result of that, the federal government said, well, we're going to pay you. We're going to finance your acceptance of black children. That's what made the difference. The federal government funded the program and basically told white folk, for every black child that you resegregate, once they get in, we're going to pay you for it. So that resulted in an offer that the school districts could not refuse, because now not only were they asking us to integrate, they were allowing us to resegregate in the name of special ed, and they gave us money for it. So once they were being paid to resegregate the black children, that's when the school districts finally opened up. It was special ed that finally integrated the schools. because they allowed them to give money to schools.